Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial from ADSR and MassiveSynth.com. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel and you want to do that, you can at youtube.com/ADSR tuts. So that was a quick little demo of the bass we'll be making today in Massive. It's kind of like it worked for Grime, Dubstep, drum and bass, and definitely hip hop. I kind of have it going on with a hip hop drum loop right now that I made. So let's jump right into it. I have a new instance of Massive pulled up right here. So first thing we're going to do is in Oscillator 1, we are going to use the vulgar waveform, and that's under the analog electric. We're going to pitch it down to -12 because we're trying to make a bass. And I'm going to change it to bend plus minus so it's a little bit brighter. So that to my ear sounds more dubsteppy on Spectrum. And on bend plus minus or minus plus is kind of more interesting to my ear. Turn the amp down to about 60%, 60-70%. Crank the intensity down. We're going to modulate that in a bit. And then in our Oscillator 2, we're going to use the virtual analog wavetable, and we're going to turn the pulse width down, the amp down to just under halfway. And I'm going to brighten my screen real quick for you guys. And I'm going to pitch this all the way down to -24. And it's important to turn this up to F1 for the filter because we're going to be using both. Filter 1 and filter 2. And then in Oscillator 3, we're going to use the same waveform as in Oscillator 2, but pitch it down to -12, wavetable position down to about halfway, pulse width down all the way, and amp just about 10 to 15%. And now we're going to, real quick, we're going to go to our routing tab and make sure that the routing is how we need it. And it looks like it is, so we'll keep it how it is. And so now that we have, make sure the routing was in order, on insert 1, let's put some bit crusher on this, just a little bit though, because we're going to modulate the actual crush in a little bit with an envelope. So just around there should work. And then on insert 2, let's activate it. And we're going to use the parabolic shaper. Crank the dry wet all the way up and turn the drive down. We will actually, I'll just turn it up to a little. We'll modulate that. Actually, let's see the routing. Let's get insert 2 here. Yeah, so in your routing, you can see that right here. Nothing's happening, so we want to activate insert 2 right there, so we actually get a little bit of that parabolic shaper we just turned on. Okay, so now we have the oscillators taken care of and the insert effects. Let's go on to, let's take care of the FX actually in the master effects section. So we're going to use the classic tube, and you just keep it at halfway, and we're going to add a little bit of reverb on the FX2 slot. And you're going to turn the size all the way up and the dry wet just barely out. And then turn the density and the color down a little. Okay, and in the EQ section, we're just going to boost a little bit of the highs now. So now that we kind of got the bare bones of the sound worked out, that's why a little different than some of my other tutorials, I usually kind of work left to right. The reason I did it like this is because the filters and envelopes are really important to the sound. You could swap out some of the wavetable positions and you wouldn't see a huge change in sound, but that's kind of why I did it like this, just to kind of get the oscillators and the effects set up so then you can actually really hear the changes that the modulation that we're going to do, the actual amount of effect it has to the sound, and the filters. So in filter 1, we're going to use a low pass 4 filter Make sure that mix slider's up all the way. And we're going to turn this from parallel to serial. Turn the mix knob all the way down to mix 2. And in mix 2, we're going to use the band reject. So you can turn, so let's turn the filter all the way up for the band reject. And let's turn this slider up so we get some sound. So when it's on serial, just for you guys that don't know, what that's doing is it's basically saying it's going in order. It'll go through filter 1 even if our mix slider isn't up, and then hit the band reject. So that's why I have it set to serial, because we want to use a little bit of the filter 1 to kind of add that acid type sound. So in filter 1, let's take the cutoff to about right there, and we'll modulate that in a bit and keep the resonance where it's at. And we're going to turn this bandwidth down because we'll modulate, and then the resonance down. So now you kind of got like a subby sound going on. So in our voicing section, be the next thing we need to set up. I'm going to turn up the voices to 4. And I'm going to turn on the pitch cutoff, and I'm going to turn on the pan position. And just to give it some stereo feel. And we're going to change this to monophonic and then on legato triller. And we're going to end up modulating some of this with an LFO in a bit. Let's get our envelope set up first. So now that we have the oscillators, filters kind of roughly set up, let's go on to our envelope 1 tab, and we're going to modulate the filters with this. So we'll set it up. So you're going to turn your attack up, keep the level where it's at, turn up the decay, and turn the level down. And then turn this release up a little bit. So it should be kind of this slanting shape. And now drag that into the middle slot on the cutoff and drag it out. And do the same thing with the bandwidth on filter 2. Just drag it up a little. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a macro here called Cutoff, just so you can kind of have more control over the sound. And we're going to drag this up and out a good amount. And we're going to do the same thing to our Cutoff 1, but just drag it up a little. And then we can actually control that now. So to taste. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to make some changes to our second envelope. So keep the attack all the way down, the level down to about 65-70%, the decay up a little, the level up a good amount, and then the release up a ways. So you kind of get this kind of just a rectangular shape with that slant. And now in the morph, let's take 5, so it's that sinoid, and we'll loop it to infinity, and then turn the level up. So then you just have this type of shape. This last little dot should be going out to here. And what we want to do is we want to check linear. So then it's kind of, so you can see if I didn't check that, it kind of has that bump. We want it to be a progressively upward slanting curve, and click one shot. And now we will modulate a little bit with this. So in our wavetable position, what we're going to do is we're going to, on our oscillator 1, drag this into the first slot and drag it all the way down. And we're going to do the same thing, but drag it up for the intensity. And then introduce a little bit of it in oscillator 2 by dialing back the saw position and just adding a little bit right there. And we'll add envelope 2 to oscillator 3 as well. Okay, and now we need to make a change to envelope 4, so you can turn, because we're going to modulate with that. So turn the attack down, keep the level up, the decay down, the level to about 70%. We're going to use morph 17, which is this curve 4, and we're going to use 12 for this, which is that peak expo x4, and you can keep the loop was loop 1, and on the release turn that down a little bit, and then turn your S slope down and your morph up, and we're actually going to take the decay out a little bit more. We're going to introduce a little bit of pitch modulation with that, just for some detune. Just to about 20. You can see how it thickens up the sound. And now what we need to do is I'm going to turn up the glide a little bit, and I'm going to go to our 5 LFO, turn the rate to about there, and I'm going to turn this so you can kind of just see this shape. You don't see both of them, and turn the X fade all the way up, and you can keep the amp where it is. And now we're going to modulate the pitch of our oscillator 1 just to about 0.13. And now with that envelope, let's go back to our voicing tab, and we're going to modulate our pitch cutoff. Just drag that out a little bit. That's what kind of introduces that kind of cool subby sound. So now we can play with that cutoff macro we made earlier. And that is more or less the sound, and you guys can of course play. Obviously this cutoff knob is a little different from the original one. So if you turn off that vulgar waveform, it just kind of sounds like a Moog. So you can play around with that, change it to some different types, and you can get some pretty cool changes in the sound. So if you have any questions or comments, let me know below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And as always, thanks for watching. And if you haven't headed on over to massivesynth.com, check it out. A bunch of tutorials, sound sets, everything massive. I'll see you next time, guys.